When you really think about military operations, strip away all the high-tech gear, the complex logistics, what's really at the core, it often feels like just chaos, pure uncertainty.
That's exactly the starting point. It's the fundamental reality. Doctrine tells us, straight up, that for everyone involved in combat, there are two constants. There's chance, all those unexpected things you just can't control, and then there's friction.
Friction. The military's favorite word for everything, making simple things impossibly hard.
Precisely. All those little obstacles, the misunderstandings, the delays, they pile up, and both chance and friction, they just amplify the chaos potential on the battlefield.
So how do you even begin to wrestle with that? How do you impose some kind of order?
Well, the only real tool we have against that inherent chaos is planning. Rigorous, systematic planning.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome to the Dashan Deep Dive. We're going deep, master's level deep, into those absolutely crucial first steps commanders and staffs take when they're handed a complex operational problem.
Yeah, we're focusing squarely on the bedrock. Receipt of mission, and then the incredibly vital mission analysis phase that follows.
This isn't just theory. This is the foundation for actually getting things done effectively in that chaotic environment.
And the insights we're pulling from today, they come straight from the source materials for advanced warfighting studies. We're talking Army Doctrine Publication 5.0, the big one on the operations process, Field Manual 5.0, which gets into the nuts and bolts of planning and order production, Army Techniques Publication 2.01.3, which is the Bible for intelligence preparation of the operational environment. And we're also drawing on some really sharp analysis on problem statements from the Small Wars Journal. So solid doctrinal grounding here.
Absolutely. And our mission for this deep dive isn't just to list the steps, like reading a manual. We want you, the listener, to get the why. Why this process? How does this deliberate, almost ritualistic approach help commanders actually define the problem and set the stage for, hopefully, long-term success, not just a quick fix?
Exactly. Understanding the logic behind it is key. So before we jump into step one, receipt of mission, we really need to set the stage. Understand the operational environment where all this planning actually happens. Military action, it rarely just flips a switch from peace to all-out war.
No, it's much more nuanced than that.
Doctrine lays it out along what's called a competition continuum. It's a spectrum.
Right. Spanning everything from, say, friendly cooperation, military exercises with allies,
All the way through political maneuvering, economic competition, maybe some gray zone activities.
and then escalating potentially to armed conflict and even large-scale combat operations.
Precisely. It's a dynamic flow, not just two boxes labeled peace and war.
And understanding that continuum seems critical now, especially with the focus on major regional powers.
Oh, absolutely. When you think about Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they're actively competing. They're looking for strategic advantages, often operating in that space below the threshold of traditional armed conflict.
So-called gray zone.
Exactly. And this reality forces Army units, all our forces really, to be ready for anything across that entire spectrum. From stability operations, helping a partner nation, to being prepared for high-intensity, multi-domain warfare against a peer competitor.
Which means planning has to be incredibly adaptable. You can't just have one rigid plan for one scenario.
That's the challenge. And it leads us right into this fascinating duality in military planning. The doctrine is very clear. Planning is both an art and a science.
Okay, let's unpack that. The science part seems more straightforward.
It is, in a way. The science is the structured methodology. It's the framework laid out in Field Manual 5.0, those 7 steps of the military decision-making process. It's the repeatable process, the common language, the techniques designed to make sure the staff produces synchronized plans and orders. It's the mechanics, you could say.
To how to.
Right. But then there's the art. And this is where it gets really interesting.
This is the creative application part.
Yes. It's applying doctrine, understanding your unit's capabilities, managing resources, but doing it creatively, using judgment. Because combat, at its heart, is a human contest. You can't just plug variables into a formula and get the perfect answer. It takes judgment, intuition grounded in experience, critical thinking, imagination.
So it's not enough to just follow the steps in the manual.
Not at all. True operational art is about applying that experienced judgment. Knowing when and where to commit forces, how to sequence actions, how to allocate those scarce resources for the biggest impact. Think about the great commanders in history. They understood the doctrine, the science, but they applied it with artistry, with creative flair, often adapting it to unique situations.
Okay, so this blend of art and science, this structured creativity, its ultimate purpose is problem solving, right? But what exactly is a problem in this military planning context?
Field Manual 50 gives a pretty clear definition. A
Yeah.
problem is simply an issue or an obstacle that makes it difficult to achieve your desired end state, something standing in the way.
And the planning process is the systematic way to tackle that obstacle.
Exactly. Define it, analyze it, come up with potential solutions, and crucially, focusing on solutions that lead to long-term success, not just patching things up for the moment.
Now, these problems, they aren't all created equal, are they? The doctrine talks about different types.
Right. And knowing the type of problem helps determine how you approach the planning. At one end, you have well-structured problems.
Okay, what makes them well structured?
Basically, the information you need is mostly available, the problem itself is pretty obvious, and there are established, almost doctrinal ways to solve it. Think about, say, breaching a simple, known minefield. There are standard procedures.
Sounds nice, but probably not what commanders usually face.
Rarely. More common are medium-structured problems. Here, maybe some information is available, but there are gaps. You might see several possible ways to solve it, and each one needs careful analysis and comparison.
Okay, getting more complex.
And then you hit the really tough ones. Ill-structured problems. This is where things get messy. Information might be vague, contradictory. Leaders might even disagree on what the desired end state should be, or if it's even achievable.
These sound like the classic wicked problems you hear about.
That's a perfect way to put it. Think complex counterinsurgencies, or navigating competition in the information space. There's no single right answer. This is where processes like the Army design methodology really come into play. Trying to frame the problem before you even jump into detailed planning. You have to break it down, but it demands immense critical and creative thinking.
It sounds like analyzing these ill-structured problems could take, well, a lot of time. Which brings us to maybe the biggest constraint in all of planning.
Time. Always time. It hangs over everything.
There's this constant tension, isn't there, between wanting a perfectly detailed, synchronized plan and the need to act quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take more time, you might get a better plan. But every minute you spend planning is a minute the enemy might be acting, seizing the initiative. You delay too long, you risk letting the situation get away from you.
So how do commanders and staffs manage that pressure? How do they allocate that precious time?
There's a foundational rule, a non-negotiable guide. The 1/3, 2/3 rule.
Ah, yes, the famous rule. Explain that for us.
It's simple in concept, but vital for operational tempo. The commander and their staff use no more than 1/3 of the available time, the time from receiving the mission to when execution needs to begin for their planning and issuing the order,
Okay, so they take 1/3.
which leaves the remaining 2/3 of that time for the subordinate units. For their commanders and staffs to do their own planning, issue their orders, conduct rehearsals, prepare their soldiers and equipment.
And if the higher headquarters blows that rule, if they take half the time or more,
They put their subordinates in an incredibly difficult, potentially impossible position. They might not have enough time to understand the plan, let alone prepare properly. It breaks the operational rhythm.
the doctrine even points out a common sense aspect here, doesn't it? About when you issue the order.
Yes, it makes a specific point. Technically, you could meet the 1/3 rule by sending out an order at 3 in the morning. But does that actually give your subordinate units usable time? Especially if they need daylight for reconnaissance or complex troop movements. So it's not just about the clock math. It's about providing effective, usable planning and preparation time. Judgment still applies.
It's a crucial discipline that ensures the whole force can move forward together effectively.
It absolutely is.
Okay, so the clock is ticking, the 1/3, 2/3 rule is in effect. Let's get into the formal start of the process. Step 1, receipt of mission. This is the trigger, right?
This is the official starting gun for the military decision-making process. It happens either when the unit receives a new mission, or sometimes, importantly, when they anticipate receiving one based on the unfolding situation.
And how does that mission usually arrive? Is it a formal document?
Typically, yes. It'll come down from the higher headquarters. It could be a full operation plan or an operation order, or maybe just a warning order, a heads up that an order is coming soon and they need to start preparing.
So that document lands electronically or physically in the command post, and boom, the 1/3 clock starts.
That's right. And the staff has immediate actions they must take. They can't just sit around waiting for the commander to brief them.
What are those first critical things?
The very first thing is what the doctrine calls gather the tools. It sounds simple, but it's essential.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
Everything they'll need for the analysis that's about to happen. The higher headquarters order itself, obviously. Maps, terrain products, satellite imagery. Any existing intelligence products, especially those intelligence preparation of the operational environment graphics and analyses.
Their own unit's standard operating procedures, too.
Absolutely critical, especially the planning standard operating procedure. That document should spell out exactly who on the staff is responsible for what actions, timelines, formats for products. It orchestrates the staff's effort from the start. Having those tools ready saves precious minutes later.
Makes sense. Get organized first. What else happens right away?
Simultaneously, and this is really continuous action throughout the whole process, the staff elements immediately start verifying and updating their hairpins.
Okay, running estimates. That sounds important. What are they?
Think of them as a continuous assessment of the current situation from the perspective of each staff section or warfighting function. So, the S2, the intelligence officer, maintains a running estimate of the enemy situation, where they are, what they're doing, their strengths, weaknesses. The S4, the logistics officer, keeps a running estimate of supply levels, transportation assets, maintenance status, medical capacity.
So each staff principal has their own area they're constantly tracking.
Exactly. And when that new mission comes in, they have to immediately look at their running estimate and ask, is this still accurate? What's changed? What information do I not have that I need for this specific mission?
So it's not starting from scratch each time, hopefully.
Hopefully not, if they've been doing their jobs diligently. But the new mission provides focus. These updated running estimates become the primary source of facts and analysis that feed directly into the next step, mission analysis.
And if those running estimates are off, if the S2 thinks the enemy is somewhere they aren't, or the S4 overestimates fuel supplies,
that's where plans start to unravel before they're even made. An inaccurate running estimate builds the entire plan on a faulty foundation. It's incredibly dangerous. So that immediate update and verification upon getting the mission is vital.
this idea of anticipating, of doing the preparatory work before the order even arrives. There's a fantastic historical example that really drives this home, isn't there? Patton at the Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, it's the classic case study. It's even highlighted in Army Doctrine Publication 5.0 because it illustrates the power of foresight and staff work perfectly.
Set the scene for us, December 1944.
Right. The Germans launched their massive surprise counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest. Patton's Third Army is actually engaged further south, attacking eastward. The Allied front is in crisis.
So Patton gets the call.
Well, even before the formal calls and meetings, as soon as the situation starts becoming clear, Patton doesn't wait. He immediately directs his staff, his G3 operations and G2 intelligence sections, primarily to start developing options. Specifically, 3 distinct plans for how the Third Army could rapidly disengage from its current fight, pivot 90 degrees north, and counterattack into the southern flank of the German Bulge.
So he's wargaming the response before he's even told what to do.
Exactly. Anticipatory planning based on his read of the strategic situation. So when General Eisenhower calls the famous emergency meeting of senior commanders in Luxembourg to figure out the response,
Patton walks in ready.
He walks in ready. Eisenhower famously asks him, "George, what can you do?" And Patton, apparently without blinking, says he can have 3 divisions disengaged, turn north, and attacking within 24 hours.
Which must have sounded almost impossible.
It probably did to some, but it wasn't just bluster. It was based on the detailed staff works, the route planning, the logistical calculations, the contingency plans that his staff had already done in the preceding hours and days.
So when the decision was made at that meeting to have Third Army attack north,
Patton didn't need to start the military decision-making process from scratch. He reportedly just called his headquarters, gave a prearranged code word tied to one of those specific contingency plans his staff had developed.
and the wheels started turning immediately.
3 divisions began moving within that 24-hour window. They hit the German flank, relieved the besieged forces at Bastogne, and played a decisive role in stopping the German offensive. It was a remarkable feat of operational agility.
But it raises an interesting point, doesn't it? Does relying on a brilliant, perhaps uniquely driving personality like Patton contradict the idea of a standardized, repeatable staff process that anyone can use?
That's a really insightful question. I don't think it contradicts it. I think it validates the process when led effectively. Patton didn't magically conjure those plans himself. His staff did the grinding, detailed work using the standard planning processes, updating their running estimates, analyzing terrain and enemy. What Patton provided was the leadership, the foresight, the direction to focus that staff effort before the formal order arrived. He forced the anticipation. The military decision-making process provided the framework. His leadership energized it and aimed it correctly. The staff's discipline made the rapid execution possible.
So the process enables the genius, but the genius still needs the process.
Beautifully put.
Yes.
That preparatory staff work, driven by leadership anticipating future requirements, is what allows for that kind of operational speed and flexibility when the unexpected happens.
That idea of preparatory work, of understanding the conditions before you act, leads us perfectly into the real analytical heart of the planning process, mission analysis. And driving that analysis, constantly feeding it, is this critical process called intelligence preparation of the operational environment.
You really can't overstate its importance. Intelligence preparation of the operational environment, or IPOE as everyone calls it, isn't just a single step you check off. It's a continuous systematic process. It's how the intelligence staff, working with the rest of the staff, analyzes the key mission variables, the enemy, the terrain, the weather, and civil considerations within a specific area to figure out how they'll affect our operations and the enemy's operations.
And the ultimate objective of all this intense analysis, what are they trying to achieve?
The goal is situational understanding. That's the term the doctrine uses.
Which sounds like more than just knowing facts.
Oh, much more. Field Manual 5.0 defines it as the product of applying analysis and judgment to the information you have. It's about seeing the relationships between all those different variables, the enemy's likely actions, how the terrain channels them, how weather might impact visibility or mobility, how the local population might react. It's this holistic understanding that allows the commander to actually visualize the battlefield, visualize the flow of the operation.
And in today's world, that visualization has to be incredibly broad, right? It's not just about the patch of ground in front of you.
Absolutely. True situational understanding has to integrate what's happening across multiple domains: air, land, sea, space, and critically, cyberspace. Plus, you have to consider the information environment, propaganda, social media influence, perception management, and the electromagnetic spectrum, which is vital for communications and sensors. IPOE forces the staff to think holistically.
Okay, so it's this huge integrating process. Let's break it down. IPOE generally follows 4 major steps, doesn't it? Starting with step 1, define the operational environment.
Correct. This first step is all about drawing the right boundaries, geographically and conceptually, for the analysis that follows. You have to scope the problem correctly. First, the staff identifies the limits of the area of operations. That's a specific geographical area where the commander is actually assigned responsibility for the mission by the higher headquarters. Think of it as their assigned box.
But the analysis usually needs to look beyond that box, doesn't it?
Almost always. That's where the area of interest comes in. This is a broader geographical area defined by the commander that includes areas outside the area of operations whose threats, terrain, or activities could significantly affect the mission inside the area of operations.
Can you give an example of why that distinction matters?
Sure. In a conventional fight, your area of operations might be a specific valley you need to seize, but your area of interest might extend much further back into enemy territory to include the locations of their long-range artillery, their airfields, or the assembly areas for their reserves, because those things outside your box can definitely affect your fight inside the box.
And in stability operations, it might be even broader.
Absolutely. Instability or counterinsurgency ops, the area of interest might need to cover areas where insurgents get supplies, training, or political direction, even if those are across an international border. Or it might need to encompass global networks if you're dealing with cyber threats or transnational terrorism. Defining that area of interest correctly is a critical judgment call.
And the benefit of getting this step right, defining these areas accurately, Army Techniques publication 201.3 says it's about efficiency, right?
Exactly. This "so what" is saving precious time and analytical effort. If you define your environment correctly, you focus your intelligence collection and analysis only on those things that can genuinely influence your plan and the commander's decisions. Define it too narrowly, you miss threats. Define it too broadly, you waste resources analyzing irrelevant information.
Okay, so you've defined the space. Step 2 is describe environmental effects on operations. This is where you get into the nitty-gritty of the physical and human landscape.
Right. Now, you analyze how the specific characteristics of that defined environment, the terrain, the weather, and the civil considerations will impact both friendly and enemy forces. How does it help or hinder movement, observation, security?
Terrain analysis is obviously huge here. The doctrine emphasizes those 5 military aspects of terrain.
The classic OAKOC, yes. Observation in fields of fire, avenues of approach, key terrain, obstacles, and covering concealment. The staff analyzes the entire area of operations through that lens.
And a key output of that terrain analysis is often a graphical overlay.
Yes, the primary tool is usually the Modified Combined Obstacle Overlay, the MCOO. This is a critical product. It takes all the different factors affecting mobility, slope, soil type, vegetation density, rivers, lakes, urban built-up areas, known obstacles like minefields, and synthesizes them onto one map overlay.
And it visually codes the terrain.
It does. It typically depicts terrain as severely restricted, like swamps or dense urban cores, very hard to move through. Restricted slows movement, or unrestricted, relatively easy movement. It helps visualize likely avenues of approach and defensive belts.
But that classification restricted, unrestricted, it's not absolute, is it? It depends on who's trying to move.
Crucially important point, terrain that's unrestricted for dismounted infantry might be severely restricted for heavy tanks. An open desert might be unrestricted for vehicles, but offers zero cover and concealment for soldiers on foot. So the MCOO has to be interpreted based on the specific capabilities of your force and, just as importantly, the capabilities of the threat force you're analyzing.
Beyond the physical ground, Step 2 also dives into civil considerations. These seem increasingly vital in almost any operation today.
They really are. Civil considerations cover the influence of all the man-made stuff and the people within the operational environment. The infrastructure, the local institutions, the population itself.
And there's a framework for analyzing this complexity too.
Yes. The staff uses the ASCOPE framework. It stands for areas, structures, capabilities, organizations, people, and events. So, areas might be locations with political or cultural significance. Structures could be critical infrastructure like power plants or hospitals. Capabilities refers to local resources like water or medical services. Organizations covers everything from local government to NGOs to tribal or religious groups. People analyzes the population demographics, culture, beliefs, leaders. And events looks at significant dates or activities, like holidays or elections.
Analyzing the people aspect must be incredibly complex but essential, especially in stability ops.
Absolutely critical. Understanding the population's grievances, needs, loyalties, how they communicate, who influences them. That can be the difference between success and failure when the mission involves interacting with civilians, which most missions do now.
And the analysis needs to adapt, right? We're not always fighting in deserts or forests. What about unique environments like cities or tunnels?
Great point. Urban environments are incredibly complex, three-dimensional battle spaces, dense populations, rubble, limited fields of fire. The analysis has to account for that. And subterranean systems, caves, tunnels, sewers, subway systems offer huge advantages to an enemy. Cover, concealment, hidden movement routes, logistics caches. Analyzing that underground dimension is vital if it exists in your area of operations. The MCOO needs to reflect that third dimension to surface, subsurface, and potentially airspace or rooftops in cities.
Okay, so we've analyzed the environment. Now Step 3, evaluate the threat. This shifts the focus squarely onto the adversary.
Right. Now you take what you know about the environment and combine it with what you know about the enemy force itself. What are their capabilities? How are they organized? What are their typical tactics, techniques, and procedures of their doctrine?
How does the Army categorize threats to help with this analysis?
Generally into three broad types. You have regular threats. These are basically conventional military forces of other nation-states.
Yeah.
Think armies, navies, air forces, potentially peer competitors like Russia or China with sophisticated multi-domain capabilities.
Then the opposite end.
Irregular threats. These are non-state actors. Insurgents, guerrillas, terrorists, criminal organizations, militias. They often rely on asymmetric tactics and blending in with the population.
And the really tricky one seems to be the mix of the two.
Exactly, the hybrid threat. This is when you face adversaries who blend conventional and irregular capabilities, possibly involving state actors using proxies, criminal gangs, or terrorist groups, maybe combined with cyber attacks or sophisticated propaganda. They are challenging because they don't fit neatly into one box, demanding a really broad intelligence effort.
And when evaluating any of these threats, you're looking deeper than just their equipment lists, right?
Oh, much deeper. You analyze their doctrine, how they typically fight, their organization, their training levels, their specific weapons and equipment, material, the quality and style of their leadership, their personnel strengths, their logistical and maintenance capabilities, facilities. It's a comprehensive picture.
And a key output of this evaluation is identifying potential targets.
Yes, specifically identifying high-value targets, or HVTs. These aren't just any enemy asset. They are those specific assets that the enemy commander needs to successfully complete their mission. It could be a critical command post, a key bridge they need for logistics, a specific air defense radar, a senior leader. Identifying these HVTs feeds directly into our own targeting process later in planning. How can we deny the enemy commander what they need?
This sounds like building a detailed profile of the enemy.
That's exactly what it is. You're trying to understand how they think, how they operate, what they value, and what they're capable of doing within that specific operational environment we just analyzed.
Which leads logically to the final step of IPOE. Step 4. Determine threat courses of action. This is where it all comes together.
This is the synthesis step. You take everything you've learned about the environment, step 2, and the enemy, step 3, and you predict what the enemy is likely to actually do. How will they try to accomplish their objectives given the terrain, weather, civil situation, and their own capabilities and doctrine?
What are the main products that come out of this step?
2 key things. First, the situation template, often called a site temp. This is a graphic overlay, usually put on the MCOO, that shows how the enemy is expected to array their forces and conduct their operation based on their doctrine and the conditions. It might show their defensive positions or their planned axis of advance may be phased over time.
So it's a visual prediction.
Exactly. And paired with that graphic is the threat course of action statement. This is the narrative that explains the site temp. It describes the enemy's likely objective, their purpose, the key task they'll perform, their strengths and weaknesses in this course of action, and maybe a timeline.
Now, the enemy could do lots of things. Does the staff have to predict every possibility?
No, that would be impossible and paralyze planning. The key is to develop templates for the enemy's most likely course of action, the one intelligence assesses they are most probable to adopt, and their most dangerous course of action.
Most dangerous to us, right?
Most dangerous to the success of the friendly mission. It might not be the most likely thing they'll do, but if they did do it, it would pose the biggest threat to us achieving our objective.
And why develop both?
Because you need to test your own friendly plans against both scenarios during the wargaming step later on. Your plan needs to be flexible enough to handle the expected enemy action, but also robust enough to survive or adapt if the enemy does something unexpected but much more threatening. IPOE gives the commander that crucial understanding of the threat's options.
So this whole 4-step IPOE process provides that deep shared understanding of the battlefield and the adversary.
Exactly. It fuels the entire mission analysis effort and sets the stage for developing effective friendly courses of action.
Okay, so intelligence preparation of the operational environment provides that incredibly rich understanding of the situation. But it's happening within the broader context of step 2 of the military decision-making process, which is mission analysis. This is where the staff really digs into the what and why of their own mission, right?
Precisely. IPOE provides the context, the so what, of the environment and the enemy. Mission analysis takes that, plus the higher headquarters order, and translates it into a clear understanding of the unit's own task and purpose.
And Field Manual 5.0 lays out a whole series of sub-steps for the staff during mission analysis. It's quite a detailed process.
It is. There are roughly 17 distinct sub-steps listed. They seem exhaustive, but they're designed to be methodical to ensure nothing critical gets missed. They force the staff to look at the problem from every angle.
One of the really important early steps is looking up the chain of command, isn't it? Higher echelon analysis.
Absolutely vital. You simply cannot plan your own mission effectively in isolation. You have to understand how your unit's task fits into the bigger picture.
So what specifically are they looking at in the higher orders?
They need to understand the mission and the commander's intent at 2 levels up their boss's boss. What's the overall goal they are trying to achieve? And then, even more critically, they need to understand the specific mission, the commander's intent, and the concept of operations of the headquarters directly above them, their immediate boss. What do they try to do, and how does our mission contribute directly to their success?
This is about ensuring your plan nests correctly within the higher plan.
That's the exact term, nesting. Making sure your purpose directly supports their purpose and your key tasks enable their concept of operations. If your plan doesn't nest, you might succeed tactically but fail operationally because you didn't contribute to the overall goal.
And it's not just looking up, is it? You also have to look sideways, analyzing the missions of adjacent units.
Crucial for coordination. What are the units on your left and right flank doing? What about units operating ahead or behind you? Their actions, or sometimes their inactions, can have a massive impact on your own mission.
So you need to know things like, are they securing your flank? Will their movements interfere with yours? Are they providing fire support you're counting on?
All of that. This requires collaboration between staffs, talking to the adjacent units, sharing information, deconflicting boundaries, and fire control measures. Building that shared understanding laterally is key to preventing fratricide and ensuring synchronization during execution.
Okay, context established. Then the staff has to really break down the tasks they've been given. This is task identification.
Right. And they need to be precise here, categorizing the tasks correctly because it affects planning priorities.
What are the main categories?
First, you have the specified task. This is the easy one. It's a task that is explicitly assigned to your unit in the higher headquarters order. Seize Hill 405. Secure Bridge X. It's written right there.
Okay, clear enough. What's next?
The implied task. This is where the stat has to do some thinking. An implied task is something that isn't explicitly stated in the order, but it must be done to accomplish a specified task or the overall mission.
So it's derived from analysis.
Exactly. Derived from analyzing the specified tasks, the commander's intent, the results of IPOE, your unit's capabilities, maybe even just standard doctrine. If your specified task is destroy enemy forces in Sector Z, an implied task might be conduct reconnaissance to locate enemy forces in Sector Z, or establish blocking positions to prevent enemy escape, if those weren't explicitly ordered but are necessary for success.
Finding those implied tasks sounds critical to avoid leaving gaps in the plan.
It absolutely is. Missing an implied task can lead to failure just as easily as failing a specified one.
And then from all these specified and implied tasks, the staff has to identify the most important one.
Yes. They determine the essential task. Usually there's only one, maybe two. This is the task that defines mission success. If the unit accomplishes the essential task, they've achieved the purpose given by the higher commander, even if other things go wrong. This essential task becomes the core, the what, of the unit's own mission statement that they will develop later. It provides focus for the entire unit.
The staff also needs to figure out the status of certain missions, right? Whether they're definite requirements or just possibilities, this contingency spectrum.
Yeah, this is important for resource allocation. There's a big difference between an on-order mission and a be-prepared mission.
Okay, explain the difference. What's on order?
An on-order mission is one the unit is expected to execute, just at an unspecified future time or event. The key here is that the unit is considered a committed force for this mission. This means subordinate commanders must develop detailed plans for it, allocate resources, maybe even start positioning forces. They treat it like a primary mission that will happen.
And be prepared.
A be prepared mission is a contingency. It's something the unit might have to execute, perhaps if a certain situation develops, but the unit is not yet considered a committed force. Planning for be prepared missions happens after planning for all specified and on-order missions is complete. It requires less detail initially, maybe just an outline plan, and you don't dedicate specific resources to it yet.
And mixing those up could be bad. Planning in detail for a be prepared mission as if it were on order.
Very bad. You could waste precious planning time and tie up resources needed for the main effort on something that might never happen. Getting the categorization right is crucial for prioritizing effort.
Okay, another critical part of mission analysis is dealing with uncertainty and limitations, identifying assumptions and constraints. Let's start with constraints.
Constraints are things the higher commander has told you that you must or cannot do. They limit your freedom of action. They could be restrictive, like do not cross this phase line before H+6, or do not use chemical munitions. Or they could be prescriptive, maintain control of Highway 1 at all times. They're directives you have to follow.
Pretty straightforward. Assumptions seem trickier.
They are. Assumptions are things about the future situation, the enemy, the environment, maybe even our own forces that we accept as true in the absence of proof, specifically so that we can continue planning.
Why do we need assumptions? Why not just plan based on known facts?
Because in war, you never have all the facts. If you waited until every piece of information was confirmed, you'd never finish planning. The enemy wouldn't wait. So you have to make logical, realistic assumptions about things you don't know for sure but expect to be true, like the enemy will defend Hill 405, or the main supply route will remain open, or weather will permit air operations on D-Day.
But that sounds inherently risky. What if the assumption is wrong?
That's the danger. An assumption is essentially a placeholder for a fact. If that assumption turns out to be false during execution, the whole plan or parts of it might become invalid. For example, if you assume the enemy doesn't have night vision devices, and it turns out they do, your night attack plan could be disastrously compromised. This is why assumptions must be carefully considered, minimized, and constantly reviewed.
So the staff has to actively try to confirm or deny their assumptions.
Yes. As soon as an assumption is made, it should trigger an information requirement to find out if it's actually true. Assumptions need to be validated. Treating an assumption as a fact without verification is one of the most dangerous traps in planning.
It seems like managing assumptions is a continuous job throughout the entire operation.
It absolutely is. They need to be tracked, questioned, and if one is invalidated, it has to trigger immediate reassessment and potentially the rapid decision-making process to adjust the plan. So the staff has worked through all those sub-steps. They've integrated the intelligence preparation of the operational environment. They've debated assumptions and constraints. What comes out at the end of this intensive mission analysis phase? What are the key outputs?
The most critical one, the unifying statement for the whole unit, has to be the mission statement, right?
Absolutely. This is the clear, concise directive for the unit. It has to capture the essence of the task and its purpose. And doctrine is very specific about what must be included.
It needs to answer those 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why.
Precisely. Who is the unit executing the mission? What is the essential task they must accomplish? When does the action take place? Or by when must it be completed? Where does the action occur? The objective or area. And critically, why is the unit performing this task? What's the purpose? How does it contribute to the higher commander's intent?
And getting all 5 elements in there clearly is crucial. Let's use that example from Field Manual 5.0 again. It's so clear.
It's a good idea. It was. 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment, that's the who, seizes, that's the what, the essential task, Area International Airport, that's the where, not later than D-Day, H+3, that's the when, to allow follow-on forces to airland into AO Spartan, and that's the why, the purpose.
See, every element is there, unambiguous.
And that why the purpose is so important. If subordinates understand the purpose, they can use their initiative and judgment if the situation changes or they lose contact with higher headquarters. If they only know the what, they might rigidly stick to a task that no longer makes sense in the evolving battle.
Okay, so the mission statement provides the tactical focus. But there's another important output, especially when dealing with those complex, ill-structured problems we talked about earlier, the problem statement.
Right. This comes more out of the Army design methodology thinking that often precedes or runs parallel to the detailed military decision-making process. The problem statement is different from the mission statement. It's a narrative description of the overarching problem the unit is trying to solve. It frames the context, identifies the key tensions, the obstacles that are preventing the unit or the wider organization from reaching the desired strategic or operational end state.
It sets the broader stage for why the mission is necessary.
Exactly. It helps everyone understand the complex system they're operating within. Remember that example scenario about Aggressland and Freeland?
Yeah, where Aggressland was trying to destabilize Freeland's government.
The problem statement there wasn't just about a single military task. It framed the issue broadly. Aggressland's destabilizing actions, their regional goals, the U.S. objectives of deterrence, regional stability, and being prepared to defend Freeland. It explained why military preparedness was needed within that larger geopolitical context. It helps link the tactical mission to the bigger operational and strategic goals.
So after the staff briefs the commander on all this analysis, the IPOE findings, a proposed mission statement, the problem statement, tasks, assumptions, the commander then gives direction for the next step, right?
Yes. Based on the mission analysis briefing, the commander issues 2 key pieces of guidance that will shape the development of friendly courses of action. First is the initial commander's intent.
We mentioned this earlier, but what are the core components of the commander's intent?
It's the commander's personal vision for the operation. It's designed to give subordinates clarity and focus, especially if communications break down. It typically has 3 parts. The end state. What does the situation need to look like when the operation is successfully concluded, relative to the enemy, the terrain, friendly forces, and the civil population? The purpose. A clear, concise statement of the broader reason for the operation, expanding on the why from the mission statement. And the key tasks. Not all the tasks, but the few absolutely critical activities that the entire force must perform collectively to achieve that desired end state.
So it's broader than the mission statement, more descriptive.
Exactly. It provides context and allows for discipline initiative. And alongside the intent, the commander also provides revised planning guidance.
How is that different from the intent?
The planning guidance is more directive, though still broad. It tells the staff how the commander visualizes the operation unfolding. It might specify the main effort, critical timings, acceptable risk levels, maybe rule out certain types of operations, or emphasize specific considerations. Essentially, it guides the staff as they start developing different ways, courses of action, to accomplish the mission, steering them towards options that align with the commander's vision without dictating the exact solution yet.
Okay, one last critical output from mission analysis, formalizing the commander's critical information requirements, or CCIRs.
Yes, these are absolutely crucial for focusing the intelligence collection effort. You can't collect information on everything. Resources are always limited. CCIRs identify what the commander needs to know to make critical decisions at key points in the operation.
And they fall into two main categories.
That's right. First, priority intelligence requirements, PIRs. These are focused on the enemy or the operational environment. What does the commander need to know about the adversary or the conditions to make a decision? A classic PIR might be, will the enemy defend Hill 405 with more than one company? Or, where will the enemy position their reserve? The answer directly affects a friendly decision.
And the second category focuses inward.
Yes, friendly force information requirements, or FFIRs. These are things the commander needs to know about the status of their own forces or supporting capabilities to make a decision. An FFIR might be, what is the combat effectiveness of 1st Battalion after the engagement? Or, is the primary bridge capable of supporting tank traffic? Or, what is our current ammunition status for 155mm artillery?
And these CCIRs, they aren't static, are they? They change throughout the operation.
Constantly. As the situation evolves, as decisions are made, old CCIRs become irrelevant and new ones emerge. The commander and staff are continuously reviewing and updating them. They are the direct link between the commander's need to make decisions and the intelligence and reporting systems trying to provide the answers.
So getting those CCIRs right focuses the entire intelligence and reporting effort on what truly matters for decision-making.
Exactly. It prevents the commander from being overwhelmed with irrelevant data and ensures the collection assets are working on the highest priorities. #TagOutro. So when you boil it all down, what we've talked about today, receipt of mission, intelligence preparation of the operational environment, all those mission analysis substeps, it's fundamentally about building shared understanding.
Shared understanding across the entire staff and vertically down to the subordinate units.
Precisely. It's that intensive, collaborative period where everyone uses all the available information, all the doctrine, all the analytical tools to collectively define the problem, understand the environment in all its complexity, and really nail down the mission's purpose and constraints.
It's about getting everyone onto the same sheet of music before the orchestra starts playing, so to speak.
That's a great analogy. It ensures that when execution begins, everyone understands not just what they have to do, but why, and within what limitations, and what the enemy is likely to do.
And all this detailed work up front, even though it's done under intense time pressure following that 1/3, 2/3 rule, it actually saves time later, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The quality of the mission analysis directly impacts the speed and effectiveness of execution. Because all those products we discussed,
Yeah.
the clear mission statement, the detailed IPOE analysis, the list of validated assumptions, the focused CCIRs, they become the bedrock for everything that follows.
They feed directly into developing and comparing friendly courses of action, into wargaming those plans against the enemy's likely actions.
And crucially, they enable rapid decision-making during the fight. When unexpected things happen, and they always do, having that solid foundation of shared understanding allows commanders and staffs to adapt much more quickly, using processes like the rapid decision-making and synchronization process.
Because they already understand the intent, the key terrain, the critical enemy capabilities, the assumptions that might be failing.
Exactly. If that foundation from mission analysis is weak, if the IPOE was flawed, if assumptions weren't identified or validated, if the mission statement was unclear, then every subsequent step, including execution itself, is built on shaky ground. The speed of good decisions later is directly linked to the rigor of the analysis done right here.
It really highlights how critical these foundational steps are.
They truly are. And looking forward, the complexity isn't decreasing. The future demands this true multi-domain understanding, integrating air, land, sea, space, cyber, the information environment, the whole spectrum. Which leads to a really interesting question, maybe a provocative thought to leave our listeners with.
Let's hear it.
Given that modern adversaries, especially hybrid threats, can operate globally, using proxies, conducting cyber attacks from potentially anywhere in the world, thousands of miles outside a traditional geographic area of operations. How does that challenge our traditional model? Specifically, how might those 4 steps of intelligence preparation of the operational environment, defining the environment, describing effects, evaluating the threat, determining threat courses of action, how might they need to adapt further to truly capture the global reach and the non-geographic nature of threats, especially in cyberspace? Are our current methods robust enough to avoid being constrained by old geographical thinking when facing a truly global, networked adversary?
That's a deep question. How do you effectively define the operational environment when parts of it might be virtual and borderless?
Exactly. It's a challenge that demands continuous rethinking and adaptation of even our most fundamental doctrinal processes as the character of warfare continues to evolve. Something definitely worth mulling over.